Hey guys, how's it going? Preparing here. So I played Hearthstone quite a bit, and all that time I've spent playing, I've gotten a little better and better, and I've come to the point now where I think I'm fairly good at the game. And there's a few kind of macro ideas that I try to implement when I'm playing Hearthstone in order to win, and I want to share with you guys what those are. So Hearthstone is largely a game of practice, and it's a game of practice because it allows you to understand what the opponent has, or what he could have, or what he's likely to play. And this will give you a lot of information. This is something that you're not going to get from me just telling you, but I can kind of give you some advice that you're going to play different characters in different ways. For instance, if you're playing a rogue is essentially going to kill every single shitty minion that you put on the board with his dagger, and his main resource of doing this is his life pool. So you want to do a decent amount of direct damage to a rogue. However, when you're playing like a shaman or like a paladin, those are classes that almost can't win if they don't have board control. And board control is one of the concepts that I'll explain here in a second. Board control basically is having the initiative, having the, calling the shots about what's going to go on the board. And this has to do largely with the card advantage concept of the game. So, when you're playing like Magic the Gathering or some shit like that, there's a lot of cards that draw you cards. There's a lot more options. But when you're playing Hearthstone, typically a player is going to draw one card a turn. And more than that is fairly unusual. So what you want to do is you want to extract as much potential out of each card that you can possibly draw. And most of the damage that you do in Hearthstone is related to creatures. So the way you get the most value is by having the initiative, and by having the initiative, usually you have board control. What initiative is, it's a term that I essentially made up, but it describes a state of a creature. So let's just say that you have one 4/4 creature, right? And I have two 2/1 creatures. A 4/4 creature is typically going to cost like 4 mana, a 2/1 creature is typically going to cost like 1 mana. And if I have the initiative, so if my creature will attack before your creature, and that will be the case if 1, my creatures have haste, or 2, I played my creatures before you played your creatures, then I can dictate how they will attack. I can play a move like, instead of going 2 for 1, I can play something like an Iron Dwarf, which buffs an attack by 2, or something like that, or a direct damage spell. I basically can choose how I want to deal the damage. And that will almost always give me more value for each individual card than the opponent. So even though he's drawing one card and I'm drawing one card, and even if by some strange coincidence our cards are exactly the same, if I am the one attacking into him before he attacks into me, I'm going to more than likely win the game. That's kind of the concept. And that's kind of the idea behind what I call board control. And board control is really important with some decks. And some people tend to disregard this, while I feel it's somewhat appropriate against some decks. So, you can make like a warrior deck where you just kill your opponent or something like that. You can make a few different versions of it with a few different classes. But typically you're going to win by having a lot of creatures and just massing them into the opponent once he runs out of decent cards to play. And you do this by accumulating value by maintaining board control and maintaining the initiative in the game. So this is very important against some classes. I don't know if I mentioned, but classes like the shaman, classes like the paladin, they rely so heavily on buffs and having creatures work with one another and having creatures to actually do something each turn, that if they don't have any creatures at all ever, their chance of winning is pretty much 0. And this is not actually true with some classes. Some classes, let's say like a warrior or like a mage, they can just do direct damage to you. They can have a bunch of creatures do some early, let's say 15 damage, and then end with a couple of spells that do, substantial damage in the end. The idea behind board control is that, let's say you have a 3/3 creature, and let's say the paladin is a 1/1 creature. So one idea is, I'll just attack the opponent. My creature is bigger. He can't kill my creature with a 1/1 creature. But if you attack your opponent, you're giving him the initiative. And classes like the Paladin, classes like the Shaman, have enough spells that buff the creatures, or typically have enough ways for the creatures to work together in order to maintain board control if you give them the initiative. So what this means is, let's just say, again, with a 3/3 creature, it's like, well, I have a 3/3 creature, you have a 1/1. Why would I attack the 1/1? Why would I, sacrifice 3 damage to the opponent just to save myself from taking 1 damage? That doesn't make any sense. Well, it makes a lot of sense if the Paladin I'm playing has like a Blessing of Kings, giving the creature +4/+4, because then if you attack the opponent, and then he buffs his 1/1, makes it a 5/5, kills your 3/3, and then he has board initiative and a pretty big fucking creature on the board. So that's kind of the idea. For some classes, it's so important to have board control that they pretty much cannot win without it. And knowing how to play against these, knowing how to play very carefully, sometimes you have to make decisions that seem wrong just to maintain board control because it's that important. Some players, like I mentioned, they just go for the other guy, but this has backfired on me so many times, especially against like shamans and shit like that. I've gotten shamans to like 2 life, and I'm at like 30, and I end up losing the game just because, instead of killing off the 1 or 2 seemingly useless creatures on the board, I try to go for a kill. And the idea behind Hearthstone is you only go for a kill if you're absolutely positive that you can actually finish him off. Possibly not in that turn, but typically you're going to have an overwhelming board advantage to be able to pull off something like that. Now, there's a lot more details and more stuff in Hearthstone that you're going to get from just outright playing the game, but in general, that's pretty much it. But it is a pretty complex thing, because this board control idea, this initiative idea, really ties into how the decks are constructed and what you can expect your opponent to play. And this kind of stuff you're only going to get from experience, and from what I hear, pretty hard to get experience nowadays. Apparently the beta keys are not being given out that much, but as far as I can tell, the game is pretty close to finished. So, I'm pretty sure in some short amount of time, a lot of us will be playing the game. So until that time, hope you guys enjoy watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.